Thank you. As mentioned earlier, Director, in March, President Trump issued a revised refugees and visa ban executive order that suspended entry into the U.S. from 6 majority Muslim countries. This suspension was largely premised on the claim that, quote, more than 300 persons who entered the United States are refugees are currently the subjects of counterterrorism investigations by the Federal Bureau of Investigation, end quote. Can you provide any additional information on whether the persons under investigation are from the 6 countries subject to the suspension? And are these persons exclusively from the 6 countries subject to the suspension? And if not, what other countries are represented among the population that is currently under investigation?
I'm sure we can provide you. What I can tell you here is I think about a third of them are from the 6 countries, so 300, about a third of them are from the 6 countries. I think 2/3 of those were from the 7th country, Iraq, that was not included. But I'll make sure my staff gets you the precise numbers, Senator.
So Iraq is the only other country that was not among the 6 targeted countries?
I think that's right. Obviously, as you ask it, I'm wondering whether I'm wrong. And so I'll get you the precise numbers. But
Thank you.
I think it was refugees, about 300, about a third from the 6 countries, about 2/3 from Iraq. That's my
Thank you. You can provide the information
Yeah.
later. Thank you very much. And can you provide additional information on the percentage of these individuals who came to the U.S. as children?
I can't as I sit here. I'm sure we can get you that information.
Can you check that? Thank you. And can you provide additional information on the percentage of these individuals who were radicalized after having been in our country for a long period of time? However way you would describe it.
Yeah, that's a harder one because it's very hard to figure out when someone is radicalized and then when it happened. I'll ask my folks to think about what information we can get you on that. We'll do our best.
Yes, thank you. Probably during the course of your investigation, you might be able to ascertain when they became radicalized. I'm turning to the death threats against certain judges. We have an administration that challenges federal judges who disagree with President Trump's views. We've seen this in the campaign and during his presidency. Following Judge Derek Watson's ruling blocking the president's revised travel ban, Judge Watson, who sits on the Hawaii District Court, Judge Watson began receiving death threats. I understand the U.S. Marshals have primary responsibility for the protection of federal judges, but that the FBI is poised to step in if necessary. Is the FBI investigating the threats made against Judge Watson?
I believe we are. I last week visited the Honolulu field office and got briefed on our work, again, to assist the marshals in trying to understand the threats and protect the judge. So I believe we are.
And then in February, the 3 Ninth Circuit judges who ruled against the president's first travel ban also began receiving threats. Is the FBI investigating those threats?
I don't know that one for sure. I bet we are, but I can't answer with confidence as I sit here.
So can we say that any time federal judges are threatened that the FBI would likely be involved in investigating those threats?
Probably in most circumstances. The marshals have the primary responsibility, and in my experience, they very, very often ask us for assistance on what information we may have, some of our technical resources. They're pretty darn good, but in most cases, I think we offer assistance.
And are the president's continued attacks on the judiciary emboldening individuals to make these sorts of threats? We're in an environment where some people might think that it's okay to issue these kinds of threats against judges who disagree with the president.
Yeah, that's not something I think I can comment on. It's concerning whenever people are directing threats at judges because their independence and insulation from influence, whether fear or favor, is at the core of the whole justice system, which is why we take them so seriously.
Yes, and so speaking of the independence of not just the judiciary, but I'd like you to clarify the FBI's independence from the DOJ apparatus. Can the FBI conduct an investigation independent from the Department of Justice? Or does the FBI have to disclose all its investigations to the DOJ? Does it have to get the Attorney General's consent?
Well, we work with the Department of Justice, whether that's Maine Justice or U.S. Attorney's offices, on all of our investigations. And so we work with them. And so in a legal sense, we're not independent of the Department of Justice. We are spiritually, culturally, pretty independent group, and that's the way you would want it. But yeah, we work with the Department of Justice on all of our investigations.
So if the Attorney General or senior officials at the Department of Justice opposes a specific investigation, can they halt that FBI investigation?
In theory, yes.
Has it happened?
Not in my experience, because it would be a big deal to tell the FBI to stop doing something that, without an appropriate purpose. I mean, oftentimes, they give us opinions that we don't see a case there, and so you ought to stop investing resources in it. But I'm talking about a situation where we were told to stop something for a political reason. That would be a very big deal. It's not happened in my experience.
Now, a number of us have called for an independent investigator or a special prosecutor to investigate the Russian efforts to undermine or to interfere with our elections, as well as the Trump team's relationships with these Russian efforts. And should the Department of Justice decide that there should be such an independent investigator or special prosecutor, and you already have an ongoing FBI investigation into these matters, and the Attorney General has already recused himself, so how would this proceed when you have the Department of Justice conducting or assigning an independent or special prosecutor, and then you're already doing an investigation? How would this work?
Our investigative team would just coordinate with a different set of prosecutors. It's as if a case was moved from one U.S. Attorney's office to another. The investigative team just starts working with a different set of assistant U.S. attorneys. You don't miss a...
So the two investigations could proceed, but you would talk to each other.
Right,
Is that what you're describing?
it's one investigation, and the strength of the justice system at the federal level in the United States is the prosecutors and the agents work together on their investigations. And so the investigators would disengage from one prosecutor and hook up to another and just continue going.
So in the investigations that you're currently doing on the Russian interference and the Trump team's relationship, are you coordinating with any U.S. Attorney's office on
Yes,
those investigations?
Well, two sets of prosecutors, Maine Justice, the National Security Division, and the Eastern District of Virginia U.S. Attorney's Office.
So should the AG decide to go with a special prosecutor, then you would end your engagement with these other two entities and work with the DOJ?
Well, I could,
Special
yeah,
prosecutor.
potentially, or it could be that in some circumstances, an Attorney General appoints someone else to oversee it, and you keep the career-level prosecutive team. And so to the prosecutors and the agents, there's no change, except the boss is different.
If I could just ask one more follow-up question. So has this happened before, where you're doing an investigation and the Attorney General appoints a special prosecutor to conduct the same investigation?
It happened to me when I was in what I thought was my last job ever in the government as Deputy Attorney General, and I appointed Patrick Fitzgerald, then the U.S. Attorney in Chicago, to oversee a very sensitive investigation involving allegations that Bush administration officials outed a CIA operative. And so what happened is the team of agents that had been working for up a chain that came to me was just moved over and worked up under Patrick Fitzgerald.
Okay, thank you. So it happens. Thank you, Madam Chair.